entire metalhead weatherman here. Hopefully everyone's had a good weekend. So we're staring down the week ahead and a little bit beyond, getting into November. We're going to go ahead and actually take a look at all the stuff that could lie ahead here. And it's some interesting stuff at that. Severe weather-wise, we're still dealing with a lot of uncertainty. Yesterday, Tuesday, was day 4. And we actually had a day 4 slight risk, but since then the models have kind of downtrended on this. And as a result, they've dropped this now from a slight risk to a marginal risk. And it's mainly going to be entailing the threat of damaging winds and hail over towards Minneapolis, La Crosse, and the Iowa and Minnesota state line, and as well as parts of Wisconsin. So I guess you could call this a tri-state line in a way. But main feature of this, of course, damaging winds and hail. Large scale ascent is going to be the main thing that is going to be the main factor here that kind of gets these storms going here. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the upper level winds here. This is what our jet stream is currently doing and what it looks to be on the trend of doing as time goes on here. So not much to really be expected tomorrow. No surprises there. But here's our little feature here that where our chance for severe weather increases. The timing of this is really going to be key in regards to development here. We do see an area begin to develop here where we get some ascent in the higher levels of the atmosphere. And this will be existing across some of the lower levels as well. There's decent moisture return, but I think overall we're kind of lagging back. But I think the time things really start to kick up here, we've lost our daytime heating here. The sun has set. This is going to inhibit instability a bit here. And as far as some of the lower level kinematics, there's just not as much to work with here. If this low pressure area were to have been a little bit more off to the northeast here, I think we could have had a much different scenario play out here. But as of right now, I'm not seeing anything robust in the way of severe weather. There are areas where I see potential further down the line as we close in on the end of the month here, but also see that ridge coming into play, and right on that western slope here we could see a couple more chances here. The 29th is another day that I'm kind of watching a little bit more closely, especially a little bit further off toward the south, more so towards the Ozarks. We could have a shot at severe weather, but like I said, looking as far out as we are, we're over 200 hours out at this point. It's kind of more or less hearsay at this point, as I've mentioned on the channel many times before. The further out you look, the less confidence you really can have, because it could look really impressive one run, and then the next run it can look like garbage. One other thing to make note of is it does look like eventually, as we get towards the beginning of November, we could have a bit of a pattern flip trying to take shape here. Like I said, with us looking as far out as we are, over 2 weeks in advance in this case, it's going to be tough to really hone in on that right now. Limited amount of model data and a lot of time for things to change. So here's the same look as we look on the Euros. We look towards Tuesday. Good large scale ascent, but timing again is going to be the problem. So we continue to go forward. I can see a pattern here where we see that storm track definitely starting to lean into or favor parts of the Great Lakes here, and particularly the Ohio Valley in the Midwest. So between Texas, Oklahoma, maybe Kansas, all the way into Iowa and then beyond, I think this area could be a point of interest in regards to shower and thunderstorm activity. Maybe a little bit of severe, but not really a lot of merit that I can put into that right now. I'm trying to get this map to run again. I guess I gotta do this manually, but you can see a pretty similar look in the short term as far as the GFS is concerned. See that ridge beginning to really develop over here, and then as time goes on, we start to see a little bit of a ridge start to redevelop out west here. So we could be, like I said, could be seeing a pattern flip to start the month, but I think this is just going to be more of an indicator of us kind of entering what I call almost a flip-flop type of mode, where we see warm and cold air masses just kind of flipping, like just kind of traversing the U.S., just kind of flipping the pattern, so to speak. pattern looks unstable. Chances of showers, storms, severe weather, maybe even winter storms could come into play here. So this is a look at the mid-levels of the atmosphere. It's the GFS we're looking at. We're looking a little bit lower in the atmosphere. And from what we can see here, this is getting into Tuesday here. Here's that large scale ascent here, but again, towards the mid-levels, it's the timing. And that's partially going to be because this low ends up becoming much more cut off. This, like I said, if this was a little bit further off to the north and east, we could be talking a different story here, which in a way we should be thankful for. If this was happening a little bit earlier in the year, we could have disastrous consequences, but thankfully that didn't come to be. Another thing to make note of here is there's a decent bit of cold air that's going to start to be flying into the northern states here. And with this low pressure, depending on the timing of this, we could even start to see winter weather, maybe even a winter storm. All this going on while we see the southeast ridge starting to come into play here. This is going to help keep the southeast pretty warm. Hence, we're seeing a high probability of above average temperatures over towards this region. Then as time goes on, we see that ridge kind of deepen a bit, but eventually one of these systems is going to help kick that out, and the chance for showers and thunderstorms will increase as time goes on. Here's that ridge getting out of there as we get later into this run. And then as we continue to go forward here, see another little cutoff low try to develop here right around the area of that subtropical jet. Of course, this is towards the end of the model run, so not a lot of merit that can be put into this, but if this comes to be, maybe there could be more chances of severe weather ahead, maybe towards the southern plains and the Ozarks and also the Ohio Valley. We compare this to the Euro, even though we can't look quite as far out. It's going to be a pretty similar deal from the looks of it. And I don't know why this has gone all the way to 240, but this is what we're working with right now. Here's our setup going into Tuesday. Again, the Euro actually has less ascent available towards the mid-levels here. Like I said, timing is really going to be the main inhibiting factor, because if you were to look at other parameters such as moisture return, etc., it doesn't look awful, but timing is key to everything when it comes to weather. So here's the look at the, here's where things kind of differentiate between the GFS and the Euro. Here's a look at the southeast ridge again, not quite as strong. And then on top of that, once this front starts to come through, that ridging starts to take effect a little bit earlier with the Euro versus the GFS. A little bit further down the line here, maybe we could see that with GFS, but it'll be interesting to see which one of these two models kind of wins out here. These are usually the two premier models when it comes to weather in the medium range to long range here. So now that we've taken a look at that, we can also take a look at the air masses. Everything's going to 384. But from what we can see here, like I said, it's really giving a good indicator of the flip-flop type pattern that we're going to be dealing with here. Mainly a warm air dominant mass is going to be mainly a dominant warm air mass, can't speak, is going to be taking hold of the eastern half of the US. But as time goes on here, we start to see that erode away here, and we start to see this little change here where we see these cold air masses kind of come in, these cold shots come in as well. And then as time goes on here, we're kind of almost what I would say is a neutral pattern, where it's cold out to some parts of the southwest and then cold out towards the northeast. And then we just have these air masses moving around. Nothing really set in stone here, so to speak. Nothing really lingering around for the long term. And the Euro kind of indicates this as well. That ended up on a weird hour also. But from what we can see here, cold air mass, of course, in the blue, red air mass is warm. And of course, as time goes on, like I said, as we get towards the end of the month, we start to change our pattern just a little bit here. And this is where I'm really interested also as well with this scenario, because we see a really strong area of cold air, really big cold air mass coming into play. And this may help increase chances for maybe a winter storm. It all depends on which of the two models wins out, but if this comes into play, I would be on the lookout for maybe a winter storm over here towards maybe the Great Lakes, maybe towards the Midwest here. Just how significant that would be is kind of hard to say, considering we're looking 10 hours out, or 10 days out, excuse me. So another thing to look at for the severe weather potential will be moisture returns. As far as GFS is concerned, we're seeing good moisture returns really over the course of the next several days here, and even beyond that point. Those dew points that are getting into the 60s here are more than sufficient enough for severe weather. It's just like I've said many times before already today on this video, that timing is everything. And with the timing just not being there, not a great deal of lift being available, it kind of makes things a little bit more difficult for severe weather as far as like trying to have storms fire, so to speak. I think lift is really going to be the main inhibiting factor in the mid levels of the atmosphere. You need some kind of trigger to set things off, and if you don't have a trigger to go with, or a point of lift, you don't have a lot to work with. You can get large scale ascent, but you need focused ascent as well. So looking at the Euro, it's pretty much a similar deal. We have good moisture returns, just again, that collision of air masses there isn't a strong enough of a contrast between the two to really help overcome. The fronts aren't very impressive on this either in regards to trying to get some big time storms going. There's chances of it, but it's rather minimal at this point. But like I said, moisture returns are definitely good. So the threat of showers, storms, maybe some flooding coming into play, definitely prevalent throughout this entire run as we close out the month. As we go to temperature here, we're going to run this in a loop, but you'll kind of see a representation of what I've been talking about, of where that ridge is and where the troughs are going to end up being based on how you see these cold shots develop. Right now that cold air is in Canada, but watch what happens as we set this into a loop here. Here's the ridge, and then here comes those cold blasts. Even starting to see those single digit temperatures coming into play towards the higher elevations as time goes on here. So here's the ridging, here's that warm air coming out ahead, and this is where the chance of storms exist the most. And then as time goes on, those fronts go through, we start to see the cold air becoming a little bit more dominant over time here. So this is what the GFS is showing us. Euro's in a pretty similar look here. So pretty much starts out with a mostly ridge dominated setup here over towards the east. Towards the west, we start to get into that, we start to fall deeper into that negative PNA setup, and then eventually that cold air really starts to spread by the end of the 10-day mark, 10-day period here, and taking over a larger portion of the country. So it'll be interesting to see how the middle of November looks, honestly, because it could be pretty cold for some of us, especially the northern states here. So now that we've looked at that, let's go ahead and take a look at what our precip could look like. This can also go into loop. We'll go a little slower though, so that way it's a little easier for everybody to follow along with. And of course, like I said, no surprises here with the shower and storm activity. There's a couple of chances where I think some weaker winter storms could develop. Whether any of those will be named will be questionable at this time, but on the backside, northwestern side of these storm systems, any cold air that makes contact with some of that remnant moisture could drop some snow here. Whether one of these storms will end up named, like I said before, a little bit questionable, and we'll actually get into the names in another video shortly. But if this scenario plays out, that's interesting. Could see some ice over here towards Kansas if all kind of stays congruent with that trend. Of course, look how far out that we're looking as well, so only so much that I can actually work with there. As far as the Euro's concerned, we're gonna go ahead and take a look at that as well. Of course, we're looking a little bit we're not looking quite as far out, but nonetheless here it's pretty much a similar deal here. I'm going a little fast on that loop, but nonetheless here you can see pretty much a similar outcome based on the Euro here. So decent bit of confidence as far as a potential winter storm. Kind of see a slightly higher potential with the Euro versus the GFS here. Of course, that's based off the little bit of model discrepancy going there. I think over the next couple of days we'll gain a little more clarity with that. So might be seeing our first winter storms here soon. I guess the last things to really look at here would be the lightning flash density indicator. And this would highlight where our chances for showers and storms are going to be greatest, maybe even severe weather. Brighter colors would give me a slightly better indicator on where severe weather potential is highest. But for the most part, mainly towards Texas and towards the northern tiers of the Midwest seem to be where the greatest focus of shower and storm activity will be. No real surprises there, given the fact that we kind of pointed out some of that in regards to looking at some of the wind maps there. So one last thing we're going to look at here, and that's the 8 to 14 day outlook. We can clearly see that below average temperatures are going to be very dominant across a large part of the country here. Towards where that southeastern ridge is a little bit more dominant, we can see those near normal to above average temperatures. And then of course out towards the southwest and parts of the west coast here, we could see that above average temperature potential. But towards the heart of the country is where it's going to be cooler, especially towards those northern states, the Dakotas, Montana, and Minnesota here. Alaska actually looks like it's going to be dealing with above average temperatures within that period, as well as of course Hawaii and the Aleutians here. And then on the 6 to 10 day, it actually looks even crazier. You can see the classic negative PNA setup here. Coldest temperatures definitely most existent across the northern states here, especially over towards Minnesota, the Dakotas especially, with a 90% chance or higher of there being below average temperatures. Could be pretty frigid right here, so not anything that you aren't used to over here, folks, but definitely need to be making sure that you are staying warm. Make sure that the heater is ready to go here. It might be a little earlier than what you're expecting, but like I said, northern states, a lot of the western states, cooler than average. Towards the east, we're dealing with warmer temperatures, especially up the southern parts of the Atlantic coast. Warmer temperatures also prevalent across Alaska, parts of Hawaii, and the Aleutians as well. But that's all I got for you guys in this video. Make sure you smash that like button, decimate that subscribe button, and obliterate that share button. A lot more content coming your way outside of this to kind of help break some of this down a little bit more for those that are more interested. So I hope you're enjoying the Weather Nerd 101 content as well. Also have a second channel where I've been focusing more on music. You're going to see some content coming from there soon. I can't wait to share that with you guys. But until the next video, it's been Metalhead Weatherman. Take care. I'll see you guys soon in the next one.